Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. My goal today is to help you understand the current landscape around large language models in healthcare. And well, there's definitely a lot of hype and a lot of both good things and bad things being said. There are some ways in which hospital systems, pharmaceuticals, academic medical centers, health IT companies are already putting these systems into place, into production. And I hope to be able to really help you understand what's possible and what it takes to do that right now, today. So we're going to cover three areas. We're going to talk about large language models and some of the trends we are seeing in the recent weeks, because this is a very, very fast moving field right now. Then we're going to talk about some of the healthcare specific large language models that are available from Johnson Labs right now, and what are the benchmarks, what are the tasks, and what are the most popular use cases that we are seeing in practice. And then we're going to talk about what it takes to deploy basically like a ChatGPT like solution, medical chatbots, but within a high compliance environment, without hallucinations, and being able to use your own data on it, and how those solutions kind of look like in practice. Yeah, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat function to enter them, and we will do a Q&A session at the end of this presentation. So just a couple of words about Johnson Labs and why we are talking about natural language processing and large language models in the healthcare space. Johnson Labs is a software company that is most well known as the team behind the Spark NLP open source library, which now has over 60 million downloads. Spark NLP has been the most widely used NLP library in the enterprise for the past 5 years running. And it's really one of the main libraries that people use for deep learning, transfer learning, zero-shot learning, and now most recently, domain-specific LLMs. Specifically within the healthcare and life science space, which has always been our focus kind of as a company commercially, based on the kind of the latest NLP industry survey, 59% of the teams who kind of use any NLP basically choose to use us. So we are basically the main provider of this space. If you go to our website, there are over 50 public case studies of companies who have actually deployed the systems and put systems in production, and then presented in technical conferences about what they did. We serve the majority of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, quite a few of the large academic medical centers in the US, and dozens of software companies, and applications range everything from patient risk prediction, real-world data, real-world evidence, patient safety, pharmacovigilance, building knowledge graphs, answering questions about clinical guidelines, about biomedical research, and many others. And I said each of the examples you see on the screen is a full 30-minute video of someone from that organization explaining exactly what they did. But for us, the interesting thing is we have a lot of feedback from the industry around what it takes to actually put these systems in production. And this year when LLMs come, a lot of the discussion was, okay, look, this is hugely interesting, but we have those issues, and really, what would it take to actually have something that works in healthcare on real healthcare data in a way that's safe, compliant, effective, right, better than what we have right now. So with Johnson Labs, we have basically two calls to fame. One is that we're actually very widely deployed within the industry, and as we all know, there's a very big difference between having an kind of something that works on an academic data set and something that actually works on real world data at scale. But the other thing is that when we provide models, so any kind of AI models, our main promise to our customers, to the industry, to the community, is that we will keep you the state of the art. And when you say state of the art, we mean this in the academic sense. We mean that we have peer-reviewed papers with public code on public benchmarks, not benchmarks that we invented, that show that we deliver really the best accuracy on the same benchmarks kind of that others compete on. And we have a whole set of peer-reviewed papers around information extraction, relation extraction, de-identification, mining adverse drug reactions, biomedical research, information extraction, question answering, dating back several years. And here you can see some of the examples of what we published in 2022. In 2023, things substantially changed, right, with the release of ChatGPT, GPT-4, and really a whole avalanche of both research, investment, industry work that has come with it. And our focus has changed with it to basically help the industry, help our customers find, train, tune, and then deploy the state-of-the-art large language models are specifically for the medical domain. And you can see some of the benchmarks where we're able to actually do things that are substantially better than GPT-4, ChatGPT, BART, Pegasus, Flenty5, other models that are there. And that's how we really see our main mission nowadays. There are some tasks where LLMs can actually enable you things you could not do before, give you better accuracy, and and we set out to the task of okay, how can we help people do that? There are three things that we have found in terms of trends as we went on this project. One thing that's becoming super obvious is that while really still the best model right now that's available is GPT-4 based on a whole bunch of kind of public benchmarks, leaderboards, competitions that are being conducted. Open source LLMs are closing the gap very, very quickly. Now, the image you see here on the screen right now looks into the past, so looks at the release of what happened when it was GPT-2 and then GPT-3, and then there were models that did imaging, right, that did sound, or that that they were kind of bigger, they were smaller, or they were specific to a domain. Usually what happens, at least this is what happened in the past, I would say 3 to 4 years, whenever someone publishes a new commercial state-of-the-art model, it's substantially different, like for example, like GPT-2 was and then like GPT-3 was, right, in 2020. It takes the open source community between 12 to 14 months to produce a model that basically is just as good in terms of accuracy and coverage, and is completely free and open source. Okay, so basically every time you think you have this great new state-of-the-art model, you have about a year, right, maybe a bit more than that, until basically this thing becomes free. I would say right now, what we are seeing with this year is that the progress is even faster. And one paper that tried to track that is the paper that you can see here, a survey of large language models. And this paper tried to track over, I would say, over about 2 months, both proprietary and open source language models, and try to compare them on different measures of accuracy. And this is, it's a public paper, it's on Archive. Here you can see the publicly available models are kind of the ones that are highlighted in yellow. But the most interesting things, if you go on Archive, basically what they're saying, they submitted the first version of the paper on March 31st. And then on May 7th, they had the 10th version of the paper. So basically over this month and a half or these 6 weeks, they updated the paper 10 times. And then at some point, they basically said, look, we're just stopping to do this because every day a new model comes out. And this is also what we've seen at Johnson Labs. Really, literally every day, there's a new library, a new model, a new easier way to tune things. And it comes either when people release new data sets, when the infrastructure companies like NVIDIA or Intel make things easier to train or easier to tune. And really, if anything, one of the issues with the big open source libraries, like LangChain used in this space, is really just lack of stability because progress is so quick. But I think we're definitely seeing that really week over week, we're seeing substantial leaps in what you can do, so that you do not have to rely on any public cloud APIs. And it really will be interesting to see how that evolves over time. So that's the first trend that we are seeing and tracking. The second interesting track is about cost reduction. So one of the issues that was raised when LLM started, say, maybe 6 months ago, it was really just how expensive it is going to be to train one or to tune one. And the fact that really only very few companies in the world are going to be able to do this. And for example, one recent interview from about a month ago with the CEO of OpenAI basically said, look, training GPT-4 cost more than $100 million, right? And initially there was some assumption that, look, there are going to be, maybe 10 companies in the world who will actually be able to train their own models, and then everybody else will just use them as APIs or be their customer. But I would say very quickly it turned out that that is not the case at all. And costs are coming down extremely quickly. So this is one example. This is a model that Databricks released. It's now really a month and a half ago. And they released Dolly 2.0. So that was also the second version of their own model. It's not as good as GPT-4, but it's quite it's not that far at this point, and it's very very easy to tune for specific tasks, like you have a specific question that you needed answered. And the point was this was trained for less than $30. Okay, so somewhere between $30 and $100 million is kind of where the current range is. But I would say one of the things we are seeing is that you do not need to have a large cluster of GPUs in order to train and tune those models. There's a lot of work happening right now so that people can load models and even tune models, on their laptop. Or definitely, you can have a small set of servers, small sort of GPUs on your favorite cloud providers. And be able to tune even substantially larger models, which really opens the door to many more companies to do this, and also to many more people who are not experts, kind of not among the world's top 10 AI companies, to be able to really to tune these models and put them to use. The third trend that we are seeing is around vertical or industry-specific LLMs or large language models. So there are quite a few companies who are building LLMs that are specific to the legal sector, specific to the finance sector. There's a company who build what's called Radio GPT. So it's a model that actually provides live local radio that is using AIs. And for our case also there's been quite a lot of work specifically on in the healthcare field with different things. So BioGPT is there's an example here, and that's a model that's also available from Johnson Labs in kind of in a more scalable supported manner. But this is a model that was released by Microsoft Research about 3 months ago, and when it was released it had state-of-the-art accuracy for PubMed Q8 for answering biomedical questions like the questions here. And what you can do, you can show it a research abstract for any kind of medical research, clinical trial protocol, other protocols, and it can answer specific questions about the paragraph that you show it. Since then, also Google released the MedPalm 2, and there are really other companies that are doing specific things really in all different aspects of healthcare, right? Some of them answering patient questions, some of them looking at clinical data, some of them biomedical data. And what we're going to do now is look at some of what you can get and use right now. So those are the overall trends. What we're going to do now is we're going to cover some of the specific LLMs that are actually available from Johnson Labs. So those are that software that has been released, is officially supported, tested, and in production and actively being used kind of by some of our customers, just to give an indication of really what's already out there, right? What's not, yes, we need to build this and it's a nice trend, but what is happening? So one interesting use case that's fairly popular is really just question answering. And what we've done here is we've tuned our own model, so that's BioGPT JSL, that builds on the BioGPT model, but also supports what's called closed book question answering. Closed book question answering means that, as in the example here, you just ask it a question, like in this case, okay, how do I treat asthma, right? Or I have this and I have that, what do you recommend that I do? Or what's the common clinical guideline in this case or that case? And you don't have to give it the paragraph, right? And say, please answer from this paper, right? Or from this example, just it's a closed book thing, right? So it's please memorize the whole internet and give me an answer, right? That's reasonable and correct. So that is one thing that we give you the ability to do, and it's part of the Johnson Labs library, right? So really, there's a it's about 5 lines of code to actually pose this question in a string, get an answer. So that's one capability that is there. You can it doesn't have to be a single question, so you can also say you can also give it more of a story, right? So I sprained my ankle a few days ago and it's swollen, and you can give it more context, right? And then you should expect it to understand that context, right? And there's some abilities to change how, basically, do you want a short answer? Do you want a long answer? How much do you want to, is this really more an answer to a doctor? We want to keep it short, or is an answer to a patient? It's usually considered more empathetic if you actually make it longer. If you'd like to play with those examples, there's a link here to a live demo. And this is something we have just on the public internet. So if you go to demo.johnsonlabs.com, there are quite a few of examples where you can look at text generation, question answering, and all the other capabilities that we'll go through here. Text generation is a common use case because a popular need is to be able to generate synthetic data. Okay, so in this case, I'm just looking to write an article about something. The most common cause of stomach pain is, and you want it to basically give you something that makes sense. Sometimes what you want to generate are basically synthetic patients, right? Because you need it for testing, you need it for demos, you need it to be able to train other models, right? And you don't want to use real patients or PHI for that. Sometimes you want to be able to kind of really summarize or collate content, right, for different protocols, different other sources, and create your own summaries or content based on that. But I would say in general, different types of medical text generation are definitely popular, and that's available to you as well. But I would say by far, the most popular use case that is LLM based right now is text summarization. And there are different types of summarization models that we have trained, and we include. One example is what you see here on the screen, which is summarizing clinical notes. So one of the challenges with the way people currently use electronic medical records is that patients accumulate a lot of text. So a cancer patient can easily accumulate more than 1,000 pages of text in a year. And in general, people who have a complex hospital visit or repeated either outpatient or inpatient visits can easily generate hundreds of pages within a year. And the result of that is that nobody reads them, right? Because if I get referred to as a patient and I come say, oh, here's my 400 pages of documentation, it's very detailed, please read it. You look at it, come say, well, I have 15 minutes for the whole thing, so why don't you just tell me what's going on? Right? Or really, if I'm looking at the referral, I'm really just looking for the first 3 or 4 lines to understand really why you were referred here, what's your situation, what do I need to do. Also, there's a lot of copy of pasting, right? There's a lot of repeated information, a lot of things that are there mostly for billing or other purposes. So really one of the popular use cases will be able to take the whole text of a clinical record, right? And this is an example, of course, some of them can be much longer than that, and really just produce a summary. What's interesting is that this summary is medical in nature, right? So in general, when you have a patient, you want to understand, okay, who is this patient? What's the chief complaint? Why are they here? What did they do to them? And then what is the plan going forward, right? So kind of, that's basically the first, second, and third sentence. So this specific LLM was trained kind of with this specific goal in mind, right? And tuned with that. So we have medical doctors on the team, and we've created those examples, tuned them, provided the feedback. So this really a summarization of clinical note, basically in a way the doctors would look for it. This, of course, very different than summarization of, say, newspaper articles, right? Or Wikipedia articles. And you can see that, and you'll see some of the accuracy benchmark when we get to them. Another type of summarization is summarizing biomedical research. Okay, so here, for example, you have this is one paragraph from an academic medical paper, but of course you may want to summarize the whole paper as well. You may want to look at abstracts. You may want to look at clinical protocol. You may want to look at studies of clinical safety, clinical efficacy. But then at the end, also a lot of these documents can just be a lot of text. which is a problem for humans, right? Because we can only read so much and actually understand so much at a given, with the time we have. So the ability to look at the whole body of text and then summarize the results of the review suggest that aggregate ovarian cancer surgery is so we can come and say, okay, look, here's what he says, here's the main conclusion, here is why, here's the however, right? So usually you want an however, so you want to hear the limitation. And this is that's where you start, right? If you're interested in the summary, of course, you can go and read more. But we also see this as a very popular thing because really there's an avalanche of medical research, and really people really just cannot read everything that comes out because there are tens of thousands of papers per week. And even if you're a specialist, you will not be able to follow what's going on. So the ability really to summarize, but summarize well and summarize to what's interesting in the medical domain, right? So for example, if you're summarizing a clinical trial, it's important to look at you're interested in specific trial design features, right? A number of patients, staging, and so forth. So you need to make sure that basically the right facts are included in the summary. Other types of summarization that we have tuned specific LLM for are summarizing basically questions and stories from patients. Okay, so this is one example. We can see the whole text. Hi, everyone. I've been taking this for the past 10 years, and you have the whole story. Here's what's happening to me. This happens, last week. I'm concerned about this. I began this. I'm thinking about changing to this. This has really helped me. I don't know about the side effects, blah, blah. Here's the summary. What are the side effects of sertraline and fluoxetine? Right, so basically you want the LLM to be able to read all of this and really summarize in one sentence, okay, what does this patient want? Okay, and this enables you sometimes to provide automated answers, right? Because you probably have something pre-written that can answer to that, or really just enable medical professionals to really to answer faster, right? And get to the point faster. What's interesting is that this really had to be fine-tuned separately as a different LLM, because as you can, as if you're in the field, this is something you see day to day. The language that patients use is very, very different than the language that you use in biomedical research papers, which by itself is very, very different than the language you would use in clinical notes, right? And it's just different vocabulary, different grammar, different semantics, right? So when you write something, it really it has a different meaning within the context, and you need AI models that can actually understand this specific context and really what you want to be able to extract from it. It goes deeper. So we are also training specialty-specific models and tasks. So, for example, summarizing radiology reports is its own model, because when someone has gone to radiology, right, and the report comes back, there are very specific things that you care about, specific facts that need to be in the summary, and there are quite a few more of those. What we are seeing is that, and this is consistent with other published research, but these are specifically our benchmarks that we have built and made public, is that once you actually have medical doctors generate specific data, do specific task tuning, provide specific feedback, what happens is that healthcare-specific large language models significantly outperform general purpose LLMs in terms of accuracy. So, for example, on summarization, what we have seen is that the models we have shown you, for example, on clinical note summarization is 30% more accurate than the current state-of-the-art models for general text summarization, right? So we compare to BART, to Pegasus, and to FLENT-5. But really, we can see, the gap is very substantial, and this is something really you'd expect. Anywhere in machine learning, when you have a baseline, doesn't matter how state-of-the-art the baseline is. Once you tune something to a domain, right? Once you tune something to a task, you're going to see much better accuracy. We also have other benchmarks where you compared specifically to ChatGPT and GPT-4. So we compared recognizing medical entities, clinical entities from text. So be able to look at the text and extract things like symptoms, diagnosis, anatomy, labs, social determinants, cancer staging, tumor characteristic, and so forth. We evaluated de-identification, automated de-identification of text, right? So this is something that you can definitely just ask ChatGPT here's this text, and you can write a fairly complex prompt that says, here's how I want you to de-identify it, right? Here are the 17 fields. Here's how this looks like. Here are examples. But still, even with that, you're going to see something substantially far less accurate than models that were specifically tuned for the task. And the last thing we also we publicly measured on was being able to extract and map ICD-10 CM codes. So within Johnson Labs are right now 10 different ontologies that we can automatically map concept to. So we have NDC and RX norm for drugs, allowing for labs. We have for general things. We have things like STOMED and UMLS, and then for diagnosis we have ICD-10 CM. For procedures we have ICD-10 CM PCT and CPT. But here, this is specifically what we've made public. You have the URL here at the bottom of the screen, which is a much longer kind of article and post that explains the benchmarks. We've also made the Python notebooks with the code and the data public, so that if you're looking to run these benchmarks basically on your own data, right, and compare, then you're very welcome to run them and really see what you get out of each model. All of these models are available to use right now, and as I said, we have customers who have put them in action, right, and are using them right now as part of Johnson Labs Healthcare NLP software subscription. So this is available as a Python library plus a set of models that comes with a single license, gives you access to, as you see, more than 1,000, and I think that today it's really more than 1,200 different models that we have. Everything from kind of more traditional models like name entity recognition, relation extraction, data enrichment, healthcare specific spell checking, mapping to terminologies, and now including the new LLM based models like question answering, summarization, and medical text generation that as explained are all tuned specifically for clinical and biomedical text. So that's something that's available right now. And since it's a library and it's not an API, this is something that you run on your own infrastructure. So you do not have to share any data because, as you can imagine, this is designed to run in high compliance environments where you have PHI, right? You're asking about patients. So this is sort of you install on your infrastructure, on your own server, behind your firewall. It is designed to run basically without an internet connection after installation. It does not send anything, not to Johnson Labs, not to any other third party. So basically, it's specifically designed from the ground up for this kind of high compliance environments that we all operate in. Those are the tools that we provide right now to software engineers and to data scientists who are building applications and want to have these LLMs kind of used for them. But the other, and maybe the coolest thing that tools like ChatGPT enable us to do is provide tools basically directly to end users. Right, so that we want medical doctors, right, or a clinical coder, right, or a physical therapist to be able to come and say, or a patient, right, to say, look, I just want to ask a question, just give me the answer. I don't want to tune models or understand Python, right, or build pipelines or or do all of that. And for that, there's a set of no-code tools that are being built and have been built. And for us, I would say one Johnson Labs can really by far most popular no-code tool is the NLP Lab. The NLP Lab really started its life as a data annotation tool, where domain experts, such as, for example, medical doctors, right, would come in and say, I want to build a model that automatically extracts, say, social determinants of health, right, from medical records. So I'm going to start a project. I'm going to, in a simple web UI, I'm going to come and say, well, when I say medical determinants, here's what I mean. I mean that I want to classify things like housing insecurity, food insecurity, transportation insecurity, immigration issues, religion, education, financial issues, exposure to violence, and so on. And then you would actually go and annotate documents as you annotate. The model would train and tune itself in the background until you have a model that you think is accurate enough, and then you can go and publish it. And there was support for different types of models. And there was support for using rules and prompts to kind of to bootstrap and initialize the models. And there were all kinds of tools for team management, project management, versioning, audit trail, kind of to be able to do this at scale. And this really is being used by hundreds of organizations right now in fairly, at fairly large scale. But when LLMs came, the bar was raised in a sense, and now the requests are is really to be able to answer questions like these directly, right? To come and says, look, I have a set of patients. I can give you access to the EHR, right? So you can take this data, I can feed it to you, you can index it, you can do whatever you want with it. But then I want to be able to ask this kind of question, and really, I don't think I should train anything, because that's how it works with other LLMs. I think you should just be able to give me a table with an answer, right? And within a clinical setting, you'd want to do something where basically, first of all, can I just ask a question about a patient without having to go to the EHR, right? And do 20 clicks in different tabs. But also I want to be able to build cohorts, right? If I'm doing something like an external control arm, or a real world evidence study, right? Or just medical research, right? Or comparative research. So I want to ask a question like, oh, which female patients have not started taking beta blockers within a month after a heart attack? So obviously I'm combining here questions about the demographics, right? So this is females only, about procedures, about medications, about the diagnosis that they have. I'm combining with this and that, or that, but not that. And usually, very importantly, I'm asking about over time, right? So here we have within a month. But for example, if I'm matching patients to clinical trials, very often, date of diagnosis, that since diagnosis, overlapping, diseases, procedures, right, protocols are very important to ask about. So that's one kind of question that we see people wanting to ask. And one thing that you'd expect, especially the chat-based LLMs, to help you with, right, to be able to take this and convert this to a query, right, that can return the right kind of patients. So that's on the clinical side. On the biomedical side, people want to see similar questions, but really on not on patient records, but on their own documents, right? So either clinical trials, grants, patents, protocols that are public, or especially with pharmaceutical companies or CROs, documents that they have built in-house, right? Because they can have really literally millions of documents that are kind of private and proprietary that want to be able to ask questions about. Right now, what they have is search, right? You can put it all in a search engine, and you can ask questions that are keyword-based. But now the expectation is that you want to be able to ask questions that are much more fine-grained, right? So, for example, in these example questions, I want to find specific clinical trials, but I'm not doing a keyword-based search, right? I want to find the trials based on trial characteristics, the trial protocol, right? So I want it to be multi-center. I want it to be an add-on therapy, right? I want to be in a specific population for adults. I want to understand that T2DM is type 2 diabetes mellitus, right? And in this case, this is the characteristics of the patients of this trial that I'm asking you about, right? And I want to ask about specific which outcomes, right? Well, okay, here specifically I'm asking about efficacy, right? So it's so I'm not asking about safety, but also I'm not specific about which efficacy metric I'm asking about. But I can't expect, I expect the AI model to figure it out, right, and give me the right clinical trials. And those are kind of questions that we want to enable end users to answer. And this has to be able to use kind of your own private data. And we're talking about highly confidential data, right? Whether it's clinical or biomedical. And there are three issues or three gaps that we, within the current generation of kind of APIs or models that are available, that we need to handle before we can do those things really in a regulated setting. So one important criteria is really no data sharing. So the system, they need to be able to run behind your firewall. You cannot share patient data with an API or really your own, clinical trial results, right, with a third party, with any third party really, in order to answer those questions. So this really needs to be something that essentially can run, either on-prem, right, or if it's running a cloud, runs in an air-gap environment with zero data sharing, fully under your control. The second, and this is probably the most important thing, is the no BS principle, which really means that there cannot be any hallucinations. And one of the biggest challenges with the current kind of generation of LLMs is they do hallucinate, which means that when you ask them a question, sometimes they'll give you an answer. Oh, here are the patients, here are the results, here is the recommended clinical guidelines. Sometimes they just completely make it up. Okay, and it's not that only that they make a mistake or that they lie, is that they lie very confidently, and they're very coherent about it, which makes those things, in a sense, even more misleading and harder to detect than really just not getting an answer at all. So what you want to do instead is you do not, in general, want to use the LLMs to actually provide answers, even on your own data, because then you have the hallucination issue. What you want is you want to be able to tell it, look, here's a knowledge base, here's a set of papers that I trust, right? And this is very important because, for example, clinical guidelines are also not universal, right? Within your own hospital, you may come and say, no, these are my clinical guidelines, right? For example, for cardiology, right? For internal medicine. Don't use other ones from the internet, even if they're by, National Academy of Medicine. Definitely not if you took them from Reddit. And then what the LLM should do when I type a question in the chat is not come up with an answer, but basically form a query to that knowledge base, right? So in a sense, the only thing I want you to do is form a query, go to the knowledge base, search the answer there. Okay, once you get it, yes, I want you to write the answer for me in a nice, nice English format. But you cannot invent anything, right? Everything has to come from the knowledge base. Everything has to use only the data I allowed you to use, only the most recent version. And then basically every sentence should be explainable, right? So I want to say, oh, look, why do you say that the first line of treatment for this condition is is this drug? You need to say, oh, look, it's coming from this paper, right? It's coming from page 26 of this guideline, and if you click a button, you should be able to open it and see it for yourself. So that's kind of really the most important kind of architectural consideration. The LLM does not actually answer question. The LLM basically just translates question in plain English to the knowledge base, and then when it comes back to the knowledge base, it kind of presents it in a nice way. But it does not hallucinate, it does not come up with answers, and it can explain at the sentence level everything that it shows you. Then the third criterion around no test gaps is really around responsible AI. If you want to deploy these solutions in a regulatory environment, you will have to prove to your customers, and very soon you have to prove it to a regulator that you have tested them for bias, you have tested them for fairness, you have tested them for toxicity, you have tested them for not leaking PHI or personal information, and you have tested them for robustness. Okay, meaning it cannot be the case that if I change, if I have a typo in my question, suddenly you give me a different answer, right? Different set of patients, right? Or different clinical guideline. It cannot be the case that you're providing worse answer for people based on their gender or age group or race. If you do that, you're already essentially breaking the law. And we've seen this like yesterday, for example, there was the vote on the EU AI Act in the EU Parliament, but we're seeing definitely regulators picking it up, even in the US, right, using even the current legal framework that's there. And this is something, especially in the healthcare space, if you want to deploy something, really, it really needs to be done legally, and regardless whether or not the regulation is there, you are dealing with real people's lives here, and that's another thing that at least the current generation of systems does not do. So to handle that, the way we are seeing kind of those chatbot systems being deployed right now, and this is something that we provide as an end-to-end solution, and can, if you're interested, we can help you deploy or put together. It's basically, it's one system, so it deploys one cluster. It's deployed in Kubernetes, so it can scale definitely to hundreds of millions of patients and many users if you need to. But it is deployed a single cluster on your infrastructure, behind your firewall, under your full kind of control, under full security control, with zero data sharing. And we have a system that's really broken into two parts. Let's go here right to left. So on the right to the front end, we do have the chat and the query application. So yes, you can just chat with it the same way you chat with ChatGPT. And there are user sessions, and it remembers context, and there's strong authentication, and also there's a full audit trail and versioning of the conversation themselves in case that is legally required. But every time you ask factual questions, right? So you ask anything about, find me those patients, find me those protocols, right? What is this ICD-10 code? Instead of just basically the LLM answering from its own memory, it goes to a database, right? And it's a vector database. And then basically the second part of the system is this pre-processing pipeline that takes two kinds of documents. One is that there's a whole set of data sets and terminologies and documents that we provide. So basically all of public medical research, all of the public clinical trials, hundreds of terminologies and ontologies that we curate, we keep up to date, we give them to you. And then that's one part. The other part is really your own data. So you can say, okay, look, here's my HR, here are my patients, right? So here's 10 million patients, and here's 5 years worth of history. So there's maybe 500 million documents there. Please pre-process them. And then there's a whole pre-processing cluster that takes that information, cleans it in terms of patients. There also we extract a lot of metadata there. So we extract medical concept, we extract relationship, we normalize dates, we clean up duplicates, we connect a whole view of the patient over time, and then we put it in the vector database, kind of in the semantic database for you to use. So that is overall the overall system. What it gives you as an end-to-end solution is on the right. So first of all, you can analyze multimodal data. So in terms of, you can throw structured data, tabular data, you can throw just unstructured text, you can throw PDFs. You can throw whatever you want in, right? Because we don't just kind of send it to an LLM. We basically we take it, we clean it, we extract the information we need from it, right? We make it available in context. You can get near real-time freshness, right? Because you do not need to train or tune the LLM every time you update data. Because the only thing that the LLM does is really just form a query, right, to the database. So you can update the database once a minute if you need to, right? And then every time your end users will get the fresh answers. You can leak patient data over time, right? So you can ask questions about, look, show me all the patients that have started immunotherapy in the last 6 months, for example, right? And it would just be able to find them because we have kind of pre-processed and pre-cleaned and connected the data to have that view of the patients over time. And you can easily scale to millions of patients and documents because really, and this is something that an LM cannot do, right? So LM, yes, you can load whole chapters of books right now as context, but still you cannot load billions of words, right? So if you have 10 million patients, right, and over years they have probably have hundreds of millions of documents and notes that come with them, that is something that you will not be able to otherwise do. And then what people get is that they get this chat interface with the data. They can ask questions, they can find cohorts, they can ask questions, including grouping, timeline. They get the most current answers, and every answer can be explained. So, for example, tell you, oh, this patient is diabetic, and as an end, you can say, it's like, no, they're not. I don't think they're diabetic. Where did you come up with that? You can ask for the link and come say, oh, here, look, in this lab report, right, in this progress note, right, based on this prescription, I deduced that they are diabetic. And this is very important, and we can see this as people are starting to use the systems, because as I'm sure you're familiar with it, within healthcare, different words have a different basically meaning. So someone can be diabetic because they have a diagnosis code of diabetes, and this is what's important for clinical coding and billing. Someone can be diabetes, because maybe they're not officially diagnosed, but they have two lab reports, two lab results in the past 6 months that show that they have a too high H1C, right? So look, they're looking like a diabetic, right? They're not formally diagnosed, but this would be interesting to a clinician. It could be that you deduce they're diabetic because they're on a diabetes medication, right? Even though they just got transferred to you and they don't have this in the problem list yet. And of course, in different use cases, your end user would come and say, you would want to say why, like explain this answer to me. And you want to be able to take them to the source document and see this. We also did it in biomedical setting, right? If you can say, why do you think that this, this gene has this kind of gene expression, right? Or this molecule may be an antagonist to this other protein or molecule. And you can say, well, here, because here's what we think, right? And you can say why? Oh, because here's the paper this comes from. Very often we see doctors, researchers, they'll want to go and read the paper because it makes a ton of difference whether this is a study on 10,000 people, right, or a meta-analysis of over 50 studies, or whether this is a study on 150 people, right, where someone says, oh yes, this is interesting, but it's not enough to set a clinical guideline on. or whether this can be a study on mice, right? Or it can be even just a study, right, within the lab, right? Not even on living creatures. So of course, different people within the, for example, the drug development life cycle would find these interesting at different levels, right? But it's very often, like most of the questions we see in healthcare are not, what is the capital of France? And the answer is Paris. Is more, people ask a question, but then they come say, wait a minute, when you say this is the guideline, right? When you say that, that this is what current research summarizes, right? When you say this patient has this, like, what exactly do you mean? And they often want to ask those why questions and dive deep before they can make their decisions. But I would say, if you're interested in these kinds of systems, this is something that we provide as an end-to-end solution or end-to-end architecture. And what we see is really is a combination of things. Some people just want to come and say, look, just give me the healthcare NLP, give me all the models, give me the Python library, and of course we provide training, certification, and then they just, they have their own data science team and they build it on their own. If you are one of those people or one of those teams, you can just go to johnsonlabs.install. There's a 30-day free trial, and you can, you're on your way, and you can just try the software on your own data, on your own use case, and see if it works well for you. And of course, we're happy to support. If you'd like us to help you build real more of an end-to-end solution, then also go to our website, johnsonlabs.com. There's a big button there, or you can go to the schedule a call, schedule a demo section. We'll be happy, to get on a call and see how we can help you make this happen. And with that is my presentation, and I'm open to taking some questions.
Wonderful. Thank you for that presentation, David. I do have a couple of questions here for you. The first one is, do you have comparisons with GPT-4 for all those tasks, or just the ICD-10 code extraction one?
So let's see. With GPT-4, I think we have the comparisons with name entity recognition, with the identification, and with ICD-10 CM, code extraction. So those are the one where we publish the articles, and we also publish the Python notebooks. I would say if there's a specific benchmark that you'd like to see, if you want, maybe we can run it for you or show you how to run it.
Okay, the next one I have here is, how can we bring together discriminative and large language models to benefit from deterministic and generative aspects?
Okay, so that's a very good question. There are two ways to do this. If I understand the question correctly, is how to take advantage basically of the things that already work before, right? So you have discriminative models, we have even kind of more classic models, and some are just machine learning, deep learning models that we've done. They work well, and the question is how we utilize them. And there are also some things in healthcare that are just data sets, right? So for example, for gene expression, gene product, we have all ontologies that were manually curated. So there are a couple of ways to use them. One way is really just you can just use those other models to generate training data and tuning data, and basically use it to tune your LLMs. And that's one way you can tune LLMs to specific tasks. For example, you need to better be able to pass medical exams, right, or clinical coding exams, or to do better job at, for example, at summarization. That's one. The other common way to be able to combine different types of models is using libraries like LangChain, where you can have basically set kind of chain of thought models, right? Where when you ask a question, it goes basically through multiple, through a chain of thought, right, to multiple activated models, or through tools or agents. So you can, for example, one super simple example, right? If you want to ask an LLM, what is the time, or what is the weather today in Los Angeles, then there's a tool, and it knows how to go to the web, give you the weather, right, and it gives it to the LLM, and the LLM provide those answers. So that's a very simple kind of information retrieval. But if you think about it, you can do the same with other models, right? So if you have the model that can read the DICOM image and tell you if a chest X-ray indicates pneumonia, then that's one other way to combine those models.
Okay, the next one I have here is, what foundation model is the LLM based on in your library?
So, well, I would say different ones. In general, I would say we do not disclose it. Yeah, it's different ones. At the end, it's the one that we have. At the end, we have trained and tuned our own models, and the ones that you get from us are ones that we have tuned. I would say one other reason not to give a specific name is because in 2023, I would say we're already on our fourth kind of LLM architecture. Because one other thing that happens is that really these things move so quickly, right? So you know, you have a new model come out, and then you know there was a Llama which had a license. I mean, it still has a license that cannot be used for any commercial purposes, right? Then there was Vicuna that also is the problem, and now we have you know, there's Open Assistant and Falcon, right, and other models that that have the right licenses. So really those things really change on a weekly basis. For us, the most important things when we choose which model we are based on are first of all being allowed to use them commercially, right? Which severely really limits what you do, right? And really oftentimes you just decide really to train your own. The other thing that's very important to us is transparency in terms of what the source data is. So for example, one of the pieces of the new EU AI Act, which I think is actually a good framework for a good first step for regulating these kind of models, is that you need to be transparent about really where is the training data coming from. And one reason is to ensure that you did not steal copyrighted data, right? Which is an issue with some of the models today. Another issue is to make sure that really just the data is reliable, right? So for example, when you say that you have clinical guidelines, it's not all taken from Reddit comments, right, and public Q&A, but some of it is actual approved guidelines that are there. So I would say those are the two main things we look at. But other than that, I would say a lot of it, especially a lot of the healthcare specific data, are things that our own data annotation team put together. And then really, I mean, the models we provide are models we stand behind, right? So we either train them or tune them, and we stand behind kind of the quality. We support them, right? When there are issues, we're happy to help you with them.
Great, thank you. The next one I have here is, how was the accuracy correctness measured? Have you used cosine similarity between summaries and the originals, word movers distance, or other methods? We noticed that manually measuring performance of a LLM is very time consuming and still can be subjective. Thus, the need for an objective measure like cosine similarity on vectorized text.
Yeah. So we used two standard metrics. We used blue scores and we used log1 scores. So those are the two metrics we have chosen to measure on, primarily because these are really the most widely used two metrics, kind of in the academic community, right, on the benchmarks we look at. And yes, and I mean, I agree with you that they're not subjective. In general, I mean, there are two ways you want to measure summarization. One is things like blue metric, ROG metric, or some of what you suggested here, that are they're objective, right? You can just see, look, does the summary kind of is it true to source? There are also some other measures that are subjective, where you kind of say, look, I just want I show it I show the two summaries to a person, and they tell me which one they prefer. But yeah, we really just as you advised here, we actually stuck with the standard objective metrics for the benchmark we did. And I would say also, if you're interested to run it, if you're interested to run it on using other metrics like constant similarity, right, or embedding similarity or other metrics, I'll say the code is public and you're very welcome to do that.
Great, thank you. The next one I have here is, although the evaluation of LLMs tasks like clinical note summarization based on benchmark data sets is useful, how can we make sure and get the confidence of clinical personnel in such models if we are not 100% that they are accurate and consistent? Also, how can such technology be introduced and used with its current limitations?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think really that's where we are right now. So for us, really, the first step would come and say, okay, look, can we do it, and can we show a good level of accuracy there? Do we know really what data needs to be there? Right now, what we see is, we see our customers using it, and as I mentioned, really, summarization is the most popular use case. I think part of what you need to do, part of it is definitely you need to train people that yes, this is an AI-generated summary. This is not the whole thing. It needs to be very easy to come and say when you see something in your summary and you go like huh, or like I did not expect that. I do not remember that. You need to click and go to the source and read through it. There are definitely user interface elements there, and definitely elements on how you explain this to the human doctors. And honestly, I think we're just beginning our way there, right? Because like for example, where you see AI most deployed in clinical practice is in radiology, right? Because there are a couple of hundred FDA-approved medical devices with the kind of radiology AI models that are there. And one of the challenges that we are seeing in practice is that when the algorithm recommends something, people tend to go with the recommendation, right? And they don't tend to override it. And you would expect to see the same thing in summarization, right? If there is a good enough summary, people, because all clinical workers, they're overworked. They have, there's data overload, alert overloads. If you can give me something shorter to the point, I'll just stick with it. So yes, there's definitely impact there on the workflow. I think it's an interesting issue, and I think really over the next probably couple of years, we'll need to see what happens when people put it into practice and what's the right way to do it. I would say at this point, I mean, I would love to tell you that everything is rainbows and unicorns, but reality is these models are 2 months old right now. We're seeing people just begin to deploy them, and I think there's a lot of learning left to do there.